Myself, Mariappan Subramanian. Um, I do work for Freshworks. I'm part of developer platform team at Freshworks. So I'm here to present on this title, CSS Wrap 2023. So I'll repeat the question again. How many of you are fan of CSS here? CSS or CSS frameworks, whatever. Okay, good. So I'm not a fan of CSS. I barely code CSS. Okay. But trust me, I have traveled 400 kilometers just to present this talk from Chennai. Okay. So uh, I like I can promise you I won't bore you with any CSS syntax. I came across I was more into I'm into developer platform team, right? So I was more into developer experience. I was learning about those stuffs. I used to stay up to date with that and keep following stuffs on that pattern. So I came across one recent blog post from Google. So it's their official blog titled CSS Wrap 2023. So just to give a small context on that, um, so it was more about a project which they have been doing for past 4 to 5 years. Okay, so it was on um, keeping up with the interoperability. This is the keyword which caught my attention. So that story was quite interesting and unnoticed. So I thought I'll share that here. So quickly going through the contents. So I'll majorly focusing on this particular interop project story, and from there I'll like they kind of worked on certain focus points and improved certain things in CS as well. So I'll take a couple of examples in that to like justify why it's so interesting. And finally, we'll talk about a little bit of support or compatibility things. And I'll give you the references so that you can go and explore if it's really interesting for you. So I'll start with a quick, very basic question. Like, why do you think web is more powerful? There could be, I accept there could be many variations of answer for this, but do you really think web is powerful? Yeah. So that's why we all are here and like we keep on hustling on that pattern, right? So aligning to this context, I can think of one reason why web could be stated as very powerful is that it literally works everywhere, or at least that's the expectation it should be, right? Be it any browser or any digital medium, ultimately the web should be the web, right? Web is the web. So here is where this term or terminology comes into picture, interoperability. So it's nothing but it's an ability of digital platforms or systems to work the same way everywhere. Okay. So how is it related to the topic which I have titled? So we can think in this direction. Like I told that web should be the web ultimately, right? It should work the same everywhere. So who is responsible for that particular piece? Like how do we ensure web works the same way everywhere? So ultimately, you can like narrow down to two groups, like web developers and the browsers. Okay. So now I am a web developer. I'm developing an app. What I can do, like I can ensure a few things, like feature detection. Feature detection is more like whether this particular feature works with this browser or particular device or not, and then give some fallbacks or use some other mechanisms to continue with the flow. Similarly, I can try something like progressive enhancement, which is nothing but ensuring a minimal workable page is being rendered first, and then like it kind of fulfills major flows, then leave the rest to the compatibility stuffs. Okay, I can do this. This is the max I can do as a web developer. But still, if you see, there is a fact that numerous permutations of screen sizes, accessibility related stuffs, and these things keeps on coming, right? Like there will be people will be inventing devices in different sizes, right? So there will be new browsers popping up every year. So what do we do about that? So the other part of the responsibility aligns to browsers. So what browsers can do or are doing here is that they kind of try to keep stuff simple and same everywhere. Okay. So here is where this particular project comes into picture. So the core aim of this project is to improve interoperability significantly for user benefit of users and web developers. Okay. So I'll like let's go track how this project happened. Okay. So a little bit of timeline. So initially at 2019, Mozilla came up with a simple assessment survey for developers. They just want to understand what really troubles are like, what is the biggest concern web developers have. Okay, so they came up with that survey, and from that survey, right, they came to understand like important stuffs that were not compatible or interoperable. Okay, from there, things were they were working on certain things. Then it sort of caught some community interest, and at 2021 there's something called compat happened. Okay, so compat is nothing but like it's a simple moment where certain major browser or web technology enthusiasts came together. They picked up 5 most concerning things and most used stuff in CSS like flexbox, CSS grid, and push and sticky property, like couple more. Okay, they picked up 5 things. They took a goal like we'll take 1 year and we'll try to ensure these 5 stuffs work same everywhere and it's fully compatible with all the major browsers. Okay, so this was the moment, and that project was like quite successful, and it kind of enabled a lot more developments in that space. From there, we traveled a long way, and this interop project happened. So it consists of some major names which you might be aware of, like Apple, Google, Mozilla, Microsoft, major companies who are into browsers, right? So how this team works is that every year they'll come up with some focus areas to focus on. Okay. For example, 2023, they had 26 focus areas to work or make compatible with. So this team actually make decisions based on consensus. Like basically, let's say 2 people like say Microsoft and Google comes up with some proposal. Okay, everyone else in that community or the collaborators, every other collaborator should agree to that, and no one should oppose it. Then that will be taken as a focus point, and they'll start working on that. This is how they work. Okay? So like in 2022, something different happened. They thought, why not make it open source? Like let's ask proposals from outside as well. So they opened the proposals outside, and it gained a lot of traction. And from there, like I'll show you what happened with that. So ultimately, that project which I mentioned, right, this part of this open source, this is a base project, web platform test. It's just a long list of test suites, which basically includes all the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript stuffs. This test runs every day on major browser parameters. So with this, you can actually kind of verify or like make sure things doesn't break when you introduce new stuffs, right? So this project is part of that. And if they have a dashboard, like this is the test which runs every day. You can see the metrics over here. So this is the Interop 2023 dashboard. And if you see these on the at the right, these are the focus areas which they took. They wanted to make this border image, CSS math function, few things which are introduced like interoperable among all the browsers. Okay, and every year after this particular mission or this project is done, right, they release this dashboard showcasing the progress. If you see the progress here with the stable version and experimental versions, so they publish this. So they motivate or like what to say? It stands as a recognition for all the hard works that all the browser vendors are taking care to make it interoperable, right? So this is what they have been doing. So I'll go over a few things, how this really helps, okay? So in my current role, I heavily write SAS code. Okay, like if you have used any CSS preprocessors like SAS or less, you can question yourself, right? Why you have to depend on any CSS preprocessors like SAS or less, or you go for some CSS libraries like Tailwind, right? Why is that required? Because they kind of make the CSS code highly maintainable, readable, right? So if I write with plain CSS, right, I keep on repeating stuffs. It's not modular at all. So that's why you go for other supporting frameworks, right? So, but this is a problem with CSS, so they have to solve it. So they came up with few features like this. For example, CSS natively has nesting supported. You can, similar to SAS or whatever other CSS framework supports, right? You can nest code, you can nest selectors, okay? It has natively, but the problem is that it's not interoperable. Like not other major browsers, right? They didn't show interest in adapting that. So this was taken as one focus area, okay? And now it has been moved to baseline. Baseline is kind of well supported now. So you can see these browser versions. You can directly write CSS nesting code as this. So basically, similar to SAS, you can simply write something like this, either with the ampersand, which denotes nesting selector. Browser will pass actual CSS. The main advantage is that if you use a preprocessor like SAS or less, right, it's an additional step, right? It does some pre-compilation, it converts into CSS code, it's an additional step. And you have an additional utility added, right? When it is natively supported by CSS, why you need such things, right? I agree there are few other stuffs like functions and other things which comes with those preprocessors, but these browser vendors are keep on developing that, and this is a great step ahead. Likewise, you can, it supports sibling selectors. Just add a plus in between. You can select some sibling nodes. You can do compound selection as well. I'll not go through the code. One other stuff which I like handpicked is size container queries. So if you have used media queries before, how media queries works is that it aligns with the viewport size, the entire viewport, right? So we have something called size container queries. Container queries basically, you just write a container just like media query and tell the particular element to align to the container itself. So you can do that stuff now. Similarly, there is other thing which is subgrid. So grid is itself a powerful utility. I never mastered it and I'm trying still date. I'm sticking with Flexbox for most of the cases. So in order to make grid even more powerful, right, we have something called as subgrid. So if you notice any grid, right, I'll show you one small grid. So this is a simple grid gallery. Okay, some random stuff. So if you look at here, this is a common use case, right? You keep on building such layouts often. So this is a simple grid. But the problem is here, I have designed the outside grid, but the subgrid which we have inside, right, it's a grid itself. I will show you. So if you look here, we have a main grid and we have certain grid items inside it. How I visioned or like what I expected is that this subgrids to behave the same way as the main grid. Okay, so that if I kind of resize this, right, if you see here, like I expected this to behave the same way, like it should not break irrespective of the image size. I expected this to behave the same way. Okay, but if you see, it's not aligned that much. So I'll go back. So what we have something called a subgrid. So in subgrid, you can just mention, take the grid which is inside parent container, just make the grid template columns as subgrid. What it does is it simply copies whatever the grid properties that parent has, it inherits and work the same way, so that you don't have to specifically decide how the subgrid should be rendered at all. Okay, so this solves a major pain point. You'll understand it when you really try that. So there are 26 focus areas, right? There are many other things like that. These three are the common things which I felt could replace some external utility or will be helpful. Similarly, you have many other things. I'll leave the link for that. You can go and check it out. So while using these stuffs, right, these are quite new again. So what I can do, I can simply use this support class, check the support for it, the particular browser is supported or not, and then continue with the flow. Or else you can go for some polyfills and other earlier stuffs, whichever you are using, right? So these are the references which I used. So this was the base article which I referred from Google. It's very intensive. You can check it out. We have many complex and powerful features which have been moved to baseline and got partial support. Um, this particular project is completely open source. It's very less notice. So if you are someone into open source or want to kickstart in open source, please go, keep following that. And as I told, we have 2024, like we have Interrupt 2024 open, proposals are open, and people are discussing crazily on the issues, whatever we have with the current systems, and trying to make the web the web. So that's all I have.